Hello, and welcome to the Self-Help Podcast. I'm your host, Kayla, and today we are talking about toxic positivity. This is the 5th episode of the Self-Help Podcast. I'm so excited to be here today, and I was inspired to talk about this topic because I was reflecting back on a lot of friendships that I've had in my life, and I actually didn't know what toxic positivity was until I had a friend in the past who had a lot of toxic positivity and was just not able to deal with any type of negativity at all. And of course, in the self-development industry and world here on the internet, we hear all the time of people saying to just be positive and that everything happens for a reason and all these different things, which I do agree with. I do agree that it's great to be positive, and I also do agree that everything happens for a reason. However, it gets difficult when you are bypassing your shadow and you're not looking at your shadow and you are bypassing it with this toxic positivity where you are only thinking positive and you're only saying positive things, but you're not feeling your emotions, therefore you're suppressing them. What exactly is toxic positivity? Like I said, toxic positivity is pretty much where you are just positive all the time and you avoid negative thoughts, and whenever you're around people, you're only saying positive things. You may also be invalidating other people's experiences because you're so uncomfortable with negativity. This is how I actually discovered what this was, is I had a friend who was only positive 24/7, and you would think, isn't that great, Kayla? Yes, but no, because it got to a point where I would say certain things and she would always say, stop being so negative. And it was interesting too, because out of the friendship breakups that she's had in the past, I would ask her, oh, why'd you stop being friends with this person? And she would say, oh, they were too negative. And it was interesting because she would always tell me how negative I was. And I didn't see myself as a negative person until then. And I started to internalize it, which was something I used to do very often. I would internalize other people's things because I didn't really have a strong frame. I didn't really know myself. And I did question things, but I just thought I was the problem a lot of the time. So I would just keep my mouth shut and not really have boundaries or anything. But it got so out of hand to the point where we would do some work together and we were packing up our stuff, and this was in New York City, probably 3 years ago now. And I was packing up my stuff and I had just said, oh, I don't feel like packing my stuff right now, but I'm gonna do it just to do myself the favor in the morning so that I can sleep in. And she said something along the lines of, stop being so negative, you love packing up your stuff, and blah, blah, blah. She would affirm certain things, and it was affirmations taken way too far, and she'd be like, I love packing up my stuff and blah blah blah, and I'm just okay girl, just because you don't like it doesn't mean you have to affirm that you do. So she would really avoid negative things, and she would avoid things that she just didn't like. That morning, actually, I had hit my foot on the bed and I was like, oh, ow, that hurts so bad. She literally said, stop being so negative. And I'm just what? I can't say that my foot hurts. So then I started to realize, okay, this is kind of not normal. It was after every little thing, she would nitpick and tell me I was being negative. And it got really uncomfortable to be around her because, especially whenever I was going through something, she would always invalidate the experience that I was going through and tell me, oh, just think positive and blah, blah, blah. This is working out for you, best case scenario, and which is really good, but at the same time, it didn't allow me to feel my emotions properly, and I started to suppress my emotions. And that's one thing I noticed with her is I think what it was is that she kept suppressing her emotions to the point where she was so uncomfortable that she didn't want to express any type of negative emotion. So she would always overlay it and mask it with positivity. And that's the thing. It was like a mask. It wasn't even her, And I didn't know that at the time. I know that now. And if I would have known it at the time, I probably would have handled things a lot differently. We're no longer friends anymore. And that's not the reason why we're not friends. It's actually a much bigger issue as to why we're not friends. I never talked to her about the toxic positivity situation because I was like, what am I going to tell her? That she's being too positive? Like, isn't that a little weird to say? But I didn't know what toxic positivity was at the time. And if I would have known, what I would have told her is, hey, I really didn't appreciate you invalidating my experience. I feel like I need to feel through this emotion, and I just don't want to mask it with positivity all the time. Thank you for being such an uplifting friend, but I really do need to process this right now. I would say something along the lines of that. And I do have a feeling if I were to have said something like this to this person, she would be very triggered. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I also never set boundaries, is because I didn't want to trigger somebody. But now I don't care about triggering people. Our triggers are our teachers, but at the time I didn't realize that. So I wish I would have known what I know now then. Toxic positivity can also be you just believing that no matter how difficult a situation is, you must always have a positive attitude and anything else is unacceptable, which is really not the case. It's actually a really good thing to express your negative emotions when needed, and for you to cry it out or just be angry. You know, of course there's a healthy way to release your emotions. Of course you don't want to hit anybody. Of course you want to regulate your emotions and not harm anybody. There are healthy ways to express your negative emotions. That way you're not going about your life all positive all the time, and then one day all of your suppressed feelings just come out and you're an actual mess. I want to share with you what is actually healthy positivity versus unhealthy positivity. Unhealthy positivity is when you're experiencing a negative emotion. So let me use an example here. Okay, let me tune into something maybe I've went through recently. Okay, so I'm going through a divorce right now. Instead of me being positive all the time about the divorce and saying, you know what, because what I could do is forget about all of my negative emotions towards it and just be positive and say, you know what, I deserve better, this, and that, which is all true, by the way. The positive emotions are true, like I deserve better, this, that, and the other, like I'm gonna find someone better in the future and I get to focus on myself now. That's all a perspective shift, right? But it's toxic when you don't feel the negative emotions, when you mask it with positivity. If I were to not feel my negative emotions and not release what I'm feeling and just mask it with positivity, those feelings would end up coming to me at a later time for me to deal with. The negative feelings never go away. They just stay bottled up until you're ready to release them. And what I personally like to do is, as soon as I am feeling a negative emotion, and as soon as I recognize that something needs to be felt within me, I go to a safe space, whether that be like my room or just at home, wherever I feel safe and comfortable to release my emotions, and I just let it out and I cry. And crying is normally what I do. But if you have to scream, you have to scream. Like, however you let your negative emotions out in a healthy way, do that. Because once I'm able to process those negative emotions, the positive emotions are so much more true for me in the moment, rather than masking negative emotions with positive affirmations and all this other stuff that I don't truly believe, but I'm forcing myself to believe. Does that make sense to you? It's so much better to release your negative emotions in a healthy way, so that way you can also regulate your nervous system and not take anything out on anybody else, and just process it. Be alone with yourself and with your emotions. And if you need a friend to be there with you, that's good and healthy, if that friend is able to hold space for you. But if not, it's totally fine to process your emotions alone. I prefer to process my emotions alone. If you feel like you need someone there with you, just ask a friend. Then after you've let it all out, however long it takes, it could take a day, it could take a few days, a week, 2 weeks. Of course you don't want to stay in the negativity too long, but trust me, when you release your negative emotions, you're most likely just going to bounce back to feeling better again. because what goes left must always go right. And you can only go so far left until you bounce back right. It's so much healthier to allow your emotions to come out and then be able to actually feel the positive emotions later, but actually believe them. Toxic positivity can actually take a toll on your mental health because you're not only doing this for yourself, like you're not only like holding yourself to the standard of only having positive emotions, but you're also just going to be so triggered by everybody else around you because you're not able to deal with your own shit. You're not able to deal with why this person triggered you. All you're doing is masking the emotion with positivity. And therefore, you're also going to trigger others, just like my friend triggered me. She would always tell me how negative I was being, and she always wanted to avoid negative conversations. And whenever I would open up to her about something, she would literally tell me like, oh, this conversation is getting really negative. Let's change the subject now. Like very bluntly. And I'd be like, okay. It was like a very invalidating experience. And I understand if somebody just isn't able to hold space, which she definitely was not able to hold space. And I should have noticed that the first time around, but there's a nicer way to say it instead of invalidating somebody's feelings by saying that they're being negative, because someone's feelings does not determine if they are a negative person or not, if they hold a negative frequency or not. The fact that I was feeling my feelings and felt comfortable to open up to her is just a sign that I'm able to regulate my emotions and able to feel what it is that comes up. And being able to talk about what comes up with other people is actually very healthy. As long as you're not like complaining, as long as you're not like complaining about the same thing over and over again, but you're actually taking the steps to feel your emotions and release your emotions. That way you can be in a positive mindset again, because toxic positivity is not real positivity. It's literally just a mask. Once you're able to feel the negative emotions, you're then able to actually feel real positive emotions. Now, if you're bypassing your really authentic feelings, this can lead to depression, anxiety, burnout, and you're not really going to understand why you're feeling all these things. You're just gonna keep staying positive until the lid just bursts open and you become an absolute mess because you have not dealt with your shit for years and years and years. This also had happened to me for a while. I wasn't really so to the point of toxic positivity, so to speak, but I wasn't feeling my negative emotions and I was suppressing them. And I actually didn't cry for a really long time. And this can happen when you have a lot of trauma, to where any new trauma will just numb you and you'll just be used to it if you're dealing with a lot of trauma all at once. And that's what was happening to me. It wasn't necessarily a toxic positivity situation, but I was suppressing my emotions, and I do know what that feels like. It actually did lead to my spiritual awakening because it got so bad to the point where like something needed to change. It led to depression, it led to a lot of anxiety, and that's all stuff that I had to focus on later in life and be able to fully process my emotions from my childhood trauma so that I can live a more fulfilled life. Now, I think it can become a little tough when social media is at our fingertips as well. And hi, Mochi. My cat's in the background. If you are watching on YouTube, say hi, baby. Say hi, Mochi. Say hello. Oh, you're so sweet. Are you camera shy? Oh my gosh, I love her. She's disabled, so if you see her wobbling, that's why. She's like the cutest distraction ever. Anyways, let's get back to the topic. So, social media can also play a huge role in this, because if your feed is constantly filled with just people's lives who are constantly positive and constantly just showing the highlights of their life and not showing the realness of their life, you can then start to compare your life to theirs and think, okay, I have to be positive all the time for me to live this life. When it's really not the case. You're really only seeing 1% of somebody's life on social media, and you're only seeing what they want to show you. Of course, most people do not want to show themselves crying on camera or releasing their emotions, and that's not really that's kind of like a taboo thing on the media. So it is interesting the fact that we are constantly shoved with these dream lives on social media, which is amazing because it's inspiring. But I think there needs to be a balance of showing people the real side of our lives and also the other real side of our lives, which is also us living our dream life. But there needs to be a balance of the two, or else people will just start to think your life is perfect. I'm kind of speaking to influencers right now, but if you're not an influencer and you are just consuming content, keep in mind that the people you are watching, what you are seeing is not their full life. It's not the full picture. You have absolutely no idea what they're going through, and it's not an excuse for you to just be positive all the time and bypassing your negative emotions. Another example of toxic positivity leads me back to my old friend, where she would tell me to just cheer up and stay positive and all these like kind of surface level sayings, and she'd tell me to stop being so negative about it and to be positive and this, that, and the other, instead of allowing me to express what I was feeling, and it actually damaged the trust between us. I don't do surface level friendships, and I think that's kind of what this friendship was to her. It was a very surface level friendship, but I don't do that. I get very deep with my friends, and I allow them to open up to me, and I kind of expect the same in return, if that makes sense. Not like necessarily transactional, but I just think that it's healthy to be able to communicate with your friends in a way where you're able to express yourself and the other person's able to hold space for that. And that's what I like in friendship for me, because I also hold space for my friends to express themselves if they need to. I never want to make my friend feel like they can't open up to me or they can't be their true authentic selves around me just because I enjoy positivity. You know, of course everyone loves positivity. There needs to be a balance, like I said. And it's so funny, we're coming up on Libra season and I'm a Libra and I'm all about balance. But it's really true in this case, because if negativity didn't exist, positivity wouldn't exist. And the more that you're able to feel negative emotions, the more positive emotions you're actually able to feel rather than fake feeling them. Now, I understand why people do this, because it is uncomfortable to feel your negative emotions, especially if they stem from trauma, and it's really difficult to look at your trauma. And that's why I really recommend you to create a safe space for yourself in order to release your negative emotions. My safe space is my bathroom and sometimes my bedroom. But growing up, like, my bathroom and my bedroom were the only places where people wouldn't come in, and like sometimes my bedroom was. So my bathroom was really like the place where I cried, and also toilet paper's in there so that I can use it to wipe my tears and blow my nose if needed. So that is my safe space, is my bathroom, and that's where I usually cry. I will literally sit on my bathroom floor, cry my eyes out, flush the tears that I wiped down the toilet, and it's very like cathartic for me. Like, it's very healing for me to do that. So you just have to figure out where your safe space is to fully allow yourself to feel. And I know that it's uncomfortable. I'm so sorry, but okay, that was very weird because I just saw my ex-husband's hats fall over, and my cat is right here and my other cat is in the room, so I'm confused. Okay, maybe there's a ghost. I don't know. You also have to trust yourself that you're able to come out of your negative emotions as well. And I think that's why it can be uncomfortable for a lot of people, is because, you know, it's not easy to feel the negativity. It's so much easier to just bypass it and just be positive all the time, but it really does come to a point where like the negative emotions are just going to build up and build up and build up until you decide to feel them. And this also goes in with like manifestation as well, because if you're not feeling your negative emotions, it makes it 10 times harder to manifest as well, because you're not truly in a positive vibrational state. You're still in a low vibrational state, even if you're affirming positive affirmations, but you haven't felt the negativity yet. If you're affirming positive affirmations, yes, it rewires your brain to an extent, but you still need to dig down deep below the surface and actually feel your feelings before you're able to fully reach high vibrational frequencies. Here are some signs that toxic positivity is actually affecting your life. One of the signs is constantly feeling guilty for having negative emotions or negative feelings. And this can also come from childhood. When I was a child, my mom never nurtured me or told me that it would be okay. She never rubbed my back. How she would deal with it is it was either or two ways. One way was that she would take me to the store and she would buy me something so that I'd stop being upset. That later in life turned into a really bad shopping addiction and not being able to feel my emotions properly. I'm healed from that now, but that was something that I had to deal with. The other way that she would deal with my negative emotions is she would yell at me and tell me to go to my room and stop crying. And she wouldn't be there for me. So she was very emotionally unavailable. She had her own shit going on, and I've forgiven her for that because only a hurt person would act like that. And of course, she wanted the absolute best for me and she was trying her best. But think back to childhood of how did your parents make you feel when you were expressing negative emotions? Were you able to express negative emotions in a healthy way? Another way it could be affecting your life is suppressing negative emotions so that you appear to be happy around other people because you don't want other people to know what you're going through. And this can also stem from not trusting others with your negative emotions. Again, most things really do stem from childhood, so I really encourage you to take a look at how your parents reacted when you were expressing negative emotions when you were a child. Another sign would be feeling disconnected or unauthentic in relationships with people. If you feel like you always have to put on a happy face in order to keep the peace around you, and if you feel like you're not able to express yourself around people, that could be a way that toxic positivity is negatively impacting your life. This can also increase anxiety and just stress and emotional exhaustion. Really tap into your feelings of what you are truly feeling and allow the emotions to come up so that they can be felt. So now that we've got all of that out of the way, I've explained to you what toxic positivity is and how it could be negatively impacting your life. Let's actually dive into the solutions of this. How can you actually break free from toxic positivity? One of the ways is to embrace authenticity, to actually be yourself around people and allow yourself to feel all of your emotions without judgment. And this just comes with practice. So the more that you're able to do it, the better you'll be able to be at releasing your negative emotions. But it may feel uncomfortable at first. If you feel a negative emotion come up, allow yourself to cry without judging yourself. Also, practice self-compassion. It's okay to not be okay. Okay? It's okay to have a shitty day. That's like a song. Okay, but sorry, I'm not the best singer, but that just popped into my head. But it's okay to not be okay. You can feel negative emotions and then go about your life feeling happy as well. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. You don't have to be in a negative spiral, and you don't have to be in a positive spiral. It can be whatever you choose it to be. And this is something that I've also had to learn when it came to shadow work, is when I first started doing shadow work, it was hell. And actually, my shadow work kind of stemmed from my old friend who had a lot of toxic positivity, and that was around the time that I started shadow work, and she started to really invalidate my feelings, and I kind of have a feeling that this definitely stemmed from childhood, and it was just being brought up in another person which forced me into shadow work. One kind of mistake, I don't even want to say mistake because everything happens for a reason, but one thing that happened when I started doing shadow work is I got so lost in my shadow. And what I mean by this is I would keep digging and digging and digging and finding answers and looking at my childhood every single second of the day, right? And I had no room to actually feel positive emotions. And I think that's a fear that comes to people when they think of shadow work as well, and when they think of looking at negative emotions is, well, how long am I going to feel this way for? And honestly, the realistic answer is however long you say. honestly, however long your body takes to release it. The body knows when to heal, and the body knows when to release the negative emotions. And if you allow your body to release those negative emotions, the process will be a lot easier and a lot faster. But if you resist it, it will be a lot slower. So I'm an all or nothing type of girl. I dive full in to my negative emotions when I'm feeling them because I know that that is the most healthy way for me to do it and just be by myself, and then I can go out in the world and shine my light in the best way possible because I'm not carrying around this unhealed baggage. Another way to break free from toxic positivity is to surround yourself with people who are not going to invalidate your emotions, who are safe spaces for you to express yourself. I have two friends. One's named Angie and one's named Angelique. I love them so much. We hold space for each other. Our friendship is so good because we're able to talk about so many different waves of frequency, if that makes sense. Like, we're able to talk about the really, really good things and manifestation and uplifting each other, but we're also able to talk about the really dark times and hold space for one another and actually allow the other person to feel what they're going through and to have somebody to talk to process these emotions. So that's what I mean by having a safe space around other people, because you really don't want to be surrounding yourself with people who are telling you to just stay positive and not listen to you when you are expressing yourself. If someone's not listening to you, it can just cause you to shut down and not trust anybody else in the long run. So thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast episode. I really appreciate you being here. I did want to bring awareness to this and acknowledge the fact that positivity can actually harm you or other people if you're not feeling the negative emotions. So I did want to bring awareness to this issue. Also, I really encourage you to reflect on your own behaviors and the way that you also respond to others, because you may be, sharing toxic positivity without even realizing it, or you may have someone in your life who is doing this to you, or you might be that person for yourself that's masking your negative emotions with toxic positivity. If you feel called, feel free to leave a comment down below and share your experience if you've ever had an experience with toxic positivity, and also feel free to share the ways in which you allow yourself to express your negative emotions. I feel like this could really help people down below because there's so many ways to do this in a healthy way. There's breath work, there's so many different modalities, and for me, what I've found works is to just allow myself to cry. Of course, I've had to go through so many things and I've had to go through so much shadow work in order to get to the point where I'm so comfortable with crying and being in my own energy and being able to release my negative emotions, and it took a lot of time, but I'd love to know what works best for you. That way, maybe someone in the comments below can relate and it might actually help someone. Thank you again for tuning in to this podcast. Feel free to like or rate wherever you're watching this. Please leave some feedback for me. It really, really does help out the podcast a lot. And also feel free to subscribe. I post new podcast episodes every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Before I let you go, I do want to mention that I do have some meditations on my website. Currently, I have a mindset shift meditation. I have a Ho'oponopono meditation, which is a Hawaiian forgiveness technique. I have that in a meditation. I also have a meditation to let go and detach. So if you're interested in that, the link will be down below. And again, thank you so, so much for tuning into this podcast, and I will see you in the next one. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day.